Welsh utopian in 1817 who came up with 8 hours work, 8 hours leisure, and 8 hours sleep. And that was it. It's as random as that. So it's not like it was predetermined by some people like, yes, this is exactly how we should be working. So, we can make new rules up.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leumitech, sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Synergy Global, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, Birthright Excel, Serona Partners, and in media partnership with CTech. Hello. Welcome to another episode of 20-Minute Leaders. We're going to be talking to a really interesting leader today, Sophie Wade, the founder of Flexcel Network, LLC. Sophie is a work futurist, international keynote speaker, author, and authority on fortune of work issues. She is the host of the widely popular Transforming Work podcast, and over 450,000 learners have taken her 4 LinkedIn courses, which cover empathy, future of work skills, and Generation Z. Sophie is the founder and workforce innovation specialist at Flexcel Network, a future of work consultancy. Sophie's executive advisory work and transformative workshops help companies adapt and update their work environments and attract, engage, and retain their multi-generational and distributed talent. She helps corporations maximize the benefits and minimize the disruption in their transition to talent-focused, digitalized work environments. This idea of workforce innovation, as a concept, is this, we've been having different types of work for some for a small number of years, some for thousands of years. Where are we in the timeline of how long have we been dealing with the question of workforce innovation and how do people work in the world?
I love the question. That's a new one. So what I would say is there is no set way of working. And I have lived and worked in 5 different countries. So I am very aware that there is no sort of set way of working. And different countries have very different approaches and attitudes and to work and work culture. And that has a huge impact on what the possibilities that they see for the future and how they're adapting to the new sort of work frame. So I think we have like the 40-hour work week is something that came up. It was a Welsh utopian in 1817 who came up with 8 hours work, 8 hours leisure, and 8 hours sleep. And that was it. It's as random as that. So it's not like it was predetermined by some people like, yes, this is exactly how we should be working. So, we can make new rules up. And people do in all kinds of situations. So it has always been evolving, and it's been evolving based on the technology that we have of the day, whether it's working in huge, factory lines. Then we get to, more personalized, more more mobile ways of working, and obviously the way we adapt to those new technologies that are giving us more options.
But it's really controversial, right? I mean, anybody who tries to challenge the notion of the 8-hour workday or any shift in the balance that we're used to, all of a sudden it feels as if you're challenging the whole paradigm of what it means to be human. I mean, it's really a daunting task. Why is it so dramatic? Changing, within a company, the thought process of how do we actually need to balance and what are the company's needs? Not every company needs 8 hours a day in terms of effectiveness, right?
Absolutely. I think, we are human beings. We're creatures of habit. We're comfortable that way. And so changing something which has worked for a long time or appears to have worked, and, the very nature of work has changed. It is less predictable. It is less linear and static. So we are actually needing to adapt how we're working, period. But it did it was something that we got into the routine of, and it worked for the what we know, the data that we knew at the time. We also, thought that if we paid people, that would be enough. We now understand that it's not enough, that they just go through the motions, they don't necessarily engage. And now work is much more complicated. We're dealing with much more complicated issues. We're having to work in teams much more. It has raised the bar in terms of how we need to engage. So that's when we also need to change how we're thinking about work in order to deal with the construct and the issues and the problems of today. So, I think the controversy is really about changing habits. And that's where I see the pandemic has actually been sort of useful in being so disruptive that we're now sort of out of our routines and really, which has dislodged us from the routines that we were straining against for a long time, because the future of work has been coming. The new ways of working and the new ways of doing business and operating with more flexibility have been adapting over the last couple of decades at least. And so, that sort of helped us think differently about how we need to approach work.
Right. And this idea of where, where are the priorities also for this even thought process, right? So we're running through these thought experiments where, and we need to have, at the end, a central figure that we're trying to optimize for. And I think it's also a pretty controversial question. Are we optimizing for company value? Or are we optimizing for, a problem that we're trying to solve as a large group, or are we solving for the human? So where are we in this space?
For the business and the human, not for a central figure that we can, there is no, all one size fits all. We need to dispel that idea. We have gone down to trying to optimize for the customer, the individual customer, somebody we can recognize on the street. And we need to have the same mindset. So for me, it's the priority is the mindset, which is open-minded, inclusive. It's really trying to recognize each person as an individual. Because if we're going to try and attract and convert and take care of a customer who is an individual person, we need to do that for the same thing for the employee. We can't, these days we cannot have very different approaches for external and internal relationships and treatment. So that becomes more challenging. In terms of trying to adapt for each person individually. But it is certainly possible. People have been, do recognize that, Mark is really, asleep at 9 o'clock in the morning. So let's just, delay the Monday morning meeting a little bit later so he can actually bring his intelligence and all that he has to work, because otherwise we're just not going to get as much out of him. That serves the business and it serves him too. So there are many different ways that we have adapting. This is just taking that another step further, because, as I say, what the needs of the business are, it's more demanding. Our customers are changing their behaviors based on the pandemic, based on the changing needs of as we're integrating more technologies, it's changing how our customers are reacting. Our competitors integrate different technologies, that changes our customer behaviors, and we're needing to make upgrades. Our customers are telling us what they like, what they don't like, more than we necessarily want. And we're having to adapt. And that means that we need to be responsive, and we need to give our employees the flexibility to be responsive too.
And how does empathy tie into all of this?
Empathy, in the way I look at it, is just about human understanding. It's if I'm going to work effectively with you, I need to understand more about you. I need to, I can see you and I can sort of like, okay, is that face, is that concentrating? Is that being distracted? He's got some, video on the side that he's actually looking at, which is amusing him. I don't know, but the more I understand you, the more I can find out about you, the more I can better manage you, or you can better manage me when we understand each other. So empathy is really, it's trying to understand who you are, how you see the world, and then connect with your experience. And then I can manage you better, or we can work together better as a team.
So if we're actually looking at, the workplace and team management and, whether it's mid-level management, top-level management, or just colleagues, what are different things that are not so trivial when it comes to working with empathy in the workplace?
When you're getting started, we all have a lot of empathy in our personal lives. When we're dealing with our parents, when we're dealing with our kids, when we're dealing with our friends, we use it a lot. We just haven't in the workplace. So when we're thinking about bringing that empathy in, it's really about paying a lot more attention. And to begin with, it will take time. It will feel a little bit contrived. It will take more effort. But when we do it and we actually make empathy habits, and so in my book, it's really about establishing new empathy habits, then it just becomes how you're working. It's listening more. It's kind of like, do I understand what he's actually saying? Is Michael, do I really understand that? And then restating it. So what I understand is what I understand what you said. And that both validates what you've said, shows that I'm interested in understanding. I don't have to agree with it, but I'm trying to understand, and I'm showing I'm trying to understand your perspective. So there are lots of little things. So it's about having, more sort of deeper and more thoughtful relationships And that also, it doesn't mean we have to be super friends, but when I understand you better, we're going to also have less conflict because we have more willingness to try and get to the same page or try and sort of understand the information that's informing your opinion versus mine. So it does take, some more effort, some more attentiveness, trying to read the features, the body language, and stepping back from our judgments, particularly when we're working at the pace we are these days, stepping back, kind of going, okay, I'm assuming my assumption about what he meant was this, but did he really? Because if I send off a sort of snippy email because I misinterpret you, then we're just wasting a whole bunch of time and energy and bad blood until we can sort of work it out and go, oh, he didn't actually mean that. Okay, fine. So it's really just taking, to begin with, taking a few more steps, being a bit more thoughtful. And also we do actually need to understand ourselves more before we can understand others. And that can take a little bit more time, I agree.
You said something interesting that I want to dig a little bit deeper.
Sure.
You were talking about how, we have empathy. It seems that we have empathy in our daily lives, and all of a sudden, we're coming to work and we sometimes forget to employ those same habits in the workplace. And I'm trying to think why. And I'm trying to think, why did we naturally make this distinction that, when we're at work, then we're a certain way, and then we come home? Is it because that there's different incentives within work that some are perhaps contrary to empathic behavior, like getting ahead, and maybe there's limited resources, and whoever is the strongest survives? I mean, what is it about the workplace that lends itself to create conflicts for humans to be more empathetic to each other?
So first of all, I would say that when you introduce money into the situation, it changes it. So one of the most impactful leadership roles I had was leading a nonprofit organization. I was the president of the New York chapter of the National Association of Women Business Owners. And when you're trying to motivate and manage and lead people without there being any money, you have to do it on a very, very different basis. You're connecting people with purpose. You're trying to create the kind of culture. You're trying to sort of understand people's individual motivations and trying to sort of tap into those. So you're doing all those type of things, which are really trying to understand who that person is. And so that's a very beneficial. So I think money changes that. Money changes, or certainly was believed to be the sufficient incentive. And we now have, reams of data that prove that that's not the case. And aligning people with their skills and strengths and motivating people different ways and, connecting people with purpose. Those are all things that we now know help people sort of work, more effectively, but also align people and help people, create an atmosphere and an environment which isn't as transactional because it's motivated very differently. I think the other thing that there is some research on, which is as you rise as a leader, there is a balance about how easy it is to be empathetic. I think partly because of, the role that you're in, you're trying to get things done. I do think this is still part of the way that we have been working, the cultures that we've been working in or not paying attention to developing the kind of cultures and trust-based relationships that allow people to lead in a very different way, which is more about empathy than ego. And when we can do that, we can lead in a very different way, which doesn't have to mean that leaders can be connecting with people and sort of helping them, do their best work. And that's my job as a leader now, is to help you do your best work, not be telling you what to do and thinking that I have all the answers.
And do we have proof that this is actually beneficial, not just for the human, which obviously it is, because it means that we enjoy work more, we feel more fulfilled, we come back home, and it's this cycle that we're in. But do we know that this is actually also beneficial for businesses? Is there an incentive from a business point of view to work on something that is less tangible and less qualitative, like empathy?
It is hard to measure empathy directly. However, if you sort of look at engagement and you sort of think about, if I understand you better, I can help you, align you with your work and help you get engaged in your work. There is certainly data from Gallup, for example, in terms of the increased profits, the increased revenues, that one finds that when you have helped engage employees, whether it's aligning with their skills and, helping them connect with the purpose and really be sort of understanding what their contributions are on a daily basis. And so in all of these areas, you can find that, empathy is really about how I'm going to do that. How, as a manager, I'm going to help you connect with your work and also tap into, like, if there's something going on, if I sort of recognize that you're sort of a bit off, either by your phone, voice tone, or you weren't as fast to get back to me, something's going on. Empathy is going to help me recognize, is there something going on at work? Is it a problem with a project? Or is it, a family situation? Just those little things are going to help, any situation not be prolonged. We can address it quickly, and then you can sort of get back, on the job and be doing your best work again. Obviously, that's going to have better, lead to better outcomes, because we're able to solve any problem or deal with an issue, early on and before things get off track.
Right. Okay. So looking tangibly, I'm, in my day to day, what are things that I can leave here and effectively do that I may not be doing now that will, help me become more empathetic to others around me, whether it's colleagues or managers or people that are working above or below me? What are the actual things I can do?
Okay, great. So as I said, my book has lots of empathy habits in. There are a number of them, whether you're in sales or a leader or in teams. A couple of the things I would say is starting meetings with a small period, which is just about sort of connecting relationship-wise. Particularly important if you're connecting remotely, because you're really having to reestablish that we know each other, so we can actually have the basis of a productive conversation, and then talking about some of the things that you do have sort of common ground and you share particular interests, because that sort of establishes, yes, Michael kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, Sophie, I know her, and so that's one thing that actually is important, both for building the relationship, making sure that we're connecting. And then particularly if there's a difficult issue that we have to deal with, that I'm showing you, particularly at the beginning, I'm showing you some areas where we are on the same page in terms of this particular area or topic, so that we can start on the sort of with a positive outlook, and then we can just have a better understanding of how we're going to explore some of the more challenging areas of that particular subject. There are also ways during meetings where you can be listening. You can be listening. You can be showing that you're listening. You can restate, what the person has said. That also gives the person a chance to kind of go, well, is that exactly what I meant? Or she hasn't necessarily understood what I said. Let me just try and say it differently. And so when that actually sort of helps give more details, gives more understanding, more clarity, and it also shows that you recognize that I'm trying to understand you. In follow-up to a meeting, having a conclusion so they're all agreed, we all know, and it's very, very clear. Just having a lot more clarity about what's going on is being empathetic, because it means that we both know exactly what the meeting was about, how we concluded, what the next steps are, and we go forward. I'd also say being empathetic I have a huge peeve about meetings. We need to be more effective with our meetings. We need to be, judicious about whether we need to have a meeting or not waste people's times. Just talking to organizations, they record every single meeting, and they record it and they put notes as well. That means, and those recordings are searchable by keyword search, which means I don't have to include you, and you don't have to feel excluded if I don't, because you know that you can get on with you can choose to be in the meeting or not. You can get on with your work, and then afterwards you can search it, see if there was anything that was relevant for you, quickly have a look at it and be productive. That's being empathetic, because I'm valuing your time and recognizing your time is precious, and you have a lot of other things to do. So I think those are some key. They're just a lot of things about being thoughtful about the other person and what they're going through and how they're actually achieving their business outcomes. And, and then when we're working together, being responsive to each other and sort of really, really watching and listening and learning and asking more questions.
And what I particularly enjoy that I'll also take with me is this idea of clarity as being more empathetic, being clear, which is it's not an intuitively, right, association with empathy. This idea that if we're managed to create an objective, clear conclusion as to what happened here, and we can agree on the situation, we agree on the outcome, and we agree on what was decided, that in effect is being empathetic, and obviously, the other things were also fascinating, just like, and something that I firmly believe in, this idea of being very judicious with the meetings and which meetings we actually need and which ones we don't. Time is the most important resource, but this idea of reaching a clear conclusion that we agree on, avoiding the pitfalls of later on misinterpretations and such. It's fascinating. And Sophie, I really want to thank you for your time and for your effort in these 20 minutes. It's fascinating, and I think it's such an interesting question. And I started the conversation with asking, where is work innovation today, and how long has it been? And honestly, I don't remember too many people talking about this even 10 years ago, right? I mean, and it feels like this is such a new concept that we're even challenging this notion of how are we working? Are we working the right way? Are we communicating the right way?
I don't think we've ever really addressed the how. And now everything's been thrown up in the air. Now we have so many more options. We actually need to be thoughtful and design how we work. And we actually don't even know how each one of us works best. We found out more over the last 2 years. So when we look at the how and we design it, we look at the workflow, and that's a lot to do with technology. If we don't do it carefully, we don't clarify these things, it's going to be even more messy than it needs to be. So I think, ultimately we'll come out at a great place. We'll be able to, focus on each other individually and sort of work to do our best work. In the meantime, it's going to be a little bit messy, but we're going to get there.
Sophie, thank you very, very much. This was wonderful. And stay safe, stay healthy. And I'm looking forward to checking out Empathy Awards by myself. Thank you.